There's a rear stairwell behind the wooden dais. Do not use the lifts. Please follow any staff instructions. If you have any mobility issues, please alert staff. Go to the nearest refuge point, which is situated at the lifts at the front of the building. Staff will then advise the incident manager and fire brigade. You will then be assisted out of the building. Once the all clear has been given by the fire brigade, staff and visitors will be allowed back into the building. If you should become ill, please alert a member of staff. Toilet facilities are at the front of the building by the lifts on the 3rd and 2nd floor, and refreshments are available to purchase from the Capitol Theatre next door or from Cafe in the Park, and please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off.
Thank you. Yes, they need to be off because I understand the hearings are being recorded. And I also understand they're being broadcast on YouTube. It's a bit of a scary prospect. I don't think that's ever happened to me before. Does anyone here who's new today object to being recorded? Because you can opt out if you wish. I understand there was a bit of an issue about that yesterday, but I mean, that's totally beyond our control, and there's no requirement for the recordings to be here recorded. It might have been, I think it was being broadcast on YouTube, and apparently it stopped. Sort of towards the end of the North Horsham session, on Tuesday, yes. So, but if there's, I've got my own notes of the session, so for what I need, if it was a YouTube issue, don't expect the council can do much about it. But anyway, just thought I'd put that in the public domain. I'm going to try and short-circuit a little bit my opening remarks today, because I think most of you were here on the first day and would not be surprised by anything that I would have said. Just a reminder that my job here is to test the soundness of the Horsham District Planning Framework against the tests of soundness set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, which I'm going to call the NPPF from now on. And as you will know, those are that it should be positively prepared, justified, effective and consistent with national policy. We don't need to have statements read out. I've tried to read through most of the points. I mean, there's a lot of appendices for something, but I've dipped into those. But if there's anything you particularly want me to make a note of, just give me the reference number and I'll take it and go back and look at it when the hearings are finished. Obviously a note about changes. The council's published some minor changes, although a couple of those might need to be advertised. I'm sort of checking through those, and we're seeing whether there's anything else emerging during the hearings before we do come to a view on that. If there's anything more significant, I mean, essentially the participants today are requesting what would undoubtedly be main modifications to the plan, so those of course would have to be advertised if I were to think that they should come forward, and possibly even the subject of a revised sustainability appraisal. I don't think there's anything else I particularly need to say. Yesterday, the agenda follows a similar format to yesterday. I thought it might be useful for both of you to. This isn't actually in any particular order, the way I've put down the sites, but I thought if we could have a general discussion about those issues there with regard to the west of Crawley area, and then go into any site specifics. We did manage to finish by late lunchtime yesterday, so I'm not expecting, given the amount of documentation I've already had, that we would need to go on much beyond that today, but we'll see how we go. I'm not going to stop you saying anything that you feel that you really need to say. Does anyone have any questions about procedure? I haven't had any new documentation, I don't think, so far today. I understand there might have been something, but I've passed that's gone to the council for comment before I've seen it. So there's nothing else on that note. So straight into the discussion of the sort of the matter of principle of further development to the west of Crawley. I've put on there, taking into account Gatwick Airport noise contour constraints. Well, they're the existing constraints. And I've forgotten to ask you to introduce yourselves, haven't There's always bound to be a mistake somewhere along the line. Sorry, can you go around the table, please, and introduce yourselves? Who's for the council this morning, please?
Good morning. I'm Barbara Childs. I'm Head of Strategic Planning and Sustainability for the Council.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brigden. I'm Planning Policy Manager at Crawley Borough Council.
Sorry, what was the surname again?
Brigden, B-R-I-G-D-E-N.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Howe. I'm the Principal Planning Officer at Horsham District Council.
Morning. My name's Matthew Bright. I'm Senior Associate Landscape Architect David Huskisson Associates, representing Horsham District Council on landscape.
Morning. My name's Chris Owen. I'm from the Planning and Transport Policy Team at West Sussex County Council.
Darryl Hemmings, West Sussex County Council.
George Sallows, representing Rusper Parish Council.
Kevin Wilcox from Crest Strategic Projects.
I'm Mike Jones from Ryden Homes, representing the Ifield Consortium.
Will Edmonds, Montague Evans.
Charlotte Yarker, Montague Evans.
Surname again, sorry?
Charlotte Yarker, Y-A-R-K-E-R.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
John Miller, Acoustic Consultant, Bickerdike Allen Partners.
I'm Damien Tungatz from Motion Highways.
Matthew Woods, Gary Gabriel Associates, Civil and Structural Engineers.
Okay, thanks very much,
Sorry,
everyone.
sir. Can I just also say we will also be joined by Stephen Kirkpatrick, who's our landscape advisor, but I understand part of the M25 has had collapsal problems this morning, so he's working his way across country at the moment, but hopes to be here about 20 past.
Okay, well, we can delay. I'm sure we've enough to talk about before we get on to that. On that point, just to say, I did sort of try and do a few site visits in the Merck yesterday afternoon. I sort of revisited Ifield and the Bewbush area, and also went down to have another look at the Mayfield site. But so I've sort of, and I've been before. I'm familiar with the area to a degree, but I've said to everybody that once the hearings are concluded, I'm going to go and look at all the sites in a lot more detail. So we're not going to go into. I don't want to revisit the housing numbers point today. I mean, if you want to make a brief explanation of where you are on that with regard to other sites, in terms of some people have come along and said, well, we want to substitute this site for another one. Other developers have said, well, they think there's headroom in the numbers, that the numbers should be increased and that more sites should be allocated. Just in summary, what's your position on that, please, Mr. Wilcox?
Well, during the course of this, and certainly last week, you heard evidence on our behalf from Charlie Collins of Savills regarding the housing numbers. So our position is as set out by Savills already, in that our view is that the objectively assessed needs have not been properly taken into account, that the numbers should be increased, and obviously that's a matter left with you. In our view, this particular site, land to the west of our current development at Kilnwood Vale, could be just one of a number of options if you were to consider that the numbers should be increased, and wish to indicate that this may be an area that could meet that need, both for Horsham, but also, of course, from what we've heard, of the unmet need likely to be arising from Crawley Borough Council itself.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, thanks, sir. Not wanting to repeat what Mr. Wilcox just said, but just for avoidance of doubt, our proposed figure that we think should be that the minimum is 767 DPA, and that's set out in our evidence, and we won't go over the details that we've talked about at previous sessions. Our position is land west of Ifield can make a significant contribution to the delivery of this higher housing target than that currently being advocated by Horsham, in particular that to meet the currently unmet needs of Crawley. We are not proposing that land west of Ifield replace any of the proposed allocations. It is over and above. Being an available, suitable and deliverable site, our position is that we can, that any land that was to be allocated land west of Ifield can also have the advantage of being ring-fenced to meet Crawley's own housing needs, of which I think there's an acceptance of that being undermet.
Okay, fine. Actually, I wanted to just notice one thing I haven't put on the sort of items for this. Well, that will come up in yours. I think delivery on both of them is an issue there, I think, that I'd like to ask some questions about, and trajectory, etc. Right, fine. Thanks very much for that. I don't know if you were all here on the first day. I mean, we think it was generally agreed, and it's sort of kept coming up, that we're dealing with the situation as it currently is with regard to Gatwick Airport, and the plan is predicated on that basis. And if there were to be a decision next year, I know there was some more information came out yesterday, or maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, I can't remember, that a decision was taken that was going to be the way that the third runway or additional capacity at London airports was going to be provided, then that would necessitate a fairly early review of the plan to see what implications that would have for the planning in Horsham, and no doubt obviously Crawley and Mid-Sussex as well, as long as other districts as well, I would imagine. But clearly, given the proximity, there are some issues about noise with regard to these sites, which I thought maybe needed to be discussed if anyone wants to talk about it, and then also the infrastructure needs, both physical and social, landscape impact as well is obviously another issue. Does anyone want to lead off on the sort of infrastructure capacity point? Has the council got any sort of concerns that necessary infrastructure can't be met on these sites, starting with sort of highways infrastructure?
So there are a couple of people that I'd like to bring in to help answer that question. Yes, the council does have concerns in terms of meeting the necessary infrastructure, but rather similar to our discussions on the last 2 days, it's particularly a question of timing. But I'd like to bring Crawley Borough Council in, and then perhaps County could comment specifically on the road transport.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Certainly from Crawley Borough Council's perspective, I think we've consistently raised concerns with regards to lack of evidence in terms of addressing infrastructure constraints in relation to development adjacent to Crawley. We do acknowledge, and positively within our draft submission plan, that opportunities for urban extensions, particularly in the form of new neighbourhoods to Crawley, is a positive way of addressing Crawley's needs, and as such we have 2 new neighbourhoods currently being developed as we speak. Historically, those 2 particular sites were identified through a study that was undertaken and then revisited in 2009, the At Crawley study. And that particular study at both stages concluded that there was capacity within the existing infrastructure of Crawley to provide 2 new neighbourhood-sized developments, particularly constrained by the issue of sewage treatment works. And in addition, there was a number of constraints with regards to the traffic and transport impacts. The 2 new neighbourhoods are being progressed as we speak, and we have continued and maintained that dialogue with regards to exploring further opportunities as to whether or not there's potential for urban extensions to Crawley beyond those in the future. As it stands, we haven't yet been satisfied that those infrastructure constraints can be addressed satisfactorily within this planned period. And obviously there are other environmental constraints as well that would need to be resolved. I will leave County to pick up on the majority of the highways perspectives. In terms of the issue of Gatwick Airport, I think we're very comfortable that this plan should be considered in light of the current Gatwick configuration and its growth to 45 million passengers per annum in as a single runway. I think we do have some concerns, though, that the modelling with regards to particularly west of Ifield hasn't taken into account necessarily the implications of a second runway and where the boundary of the airport would be moved to, and the effects on the Northern Road network. And we feel that actually that's one reason, particularly why it's important that there is early review to the plans once we have a decision with Gatwick Airport and those particular implications can be taken into account. Similarly with noise, we don't necessarily think there would be a massive issue with regards to noise from what we've seen with the contours, but they do keep changing, and obviously the design layout and how far a development reaches would all have implications from that perspective. In terms of sewage treatment works, I noted from the West of Ifield Consortium's statement that they refer to there being capacity within our the Thames Water Sewage Treatment Works facility within Crawley. The issue is a numbers position, and we've also had the same advice from Thames Water that there's capacity for approximately just over 7,000 new dwellings within Crawley and adjacent to Crawley. What the West of Ifield Consortium have added up is that there is the Forge Wood development coming forward for 2,000 new dwellings, plus the Kilnwood Vale for 2,500 new dwellings, which adds up to 4,500, which gives them scope to build out West of Ifield. What hasn't been counted is that in Crawley's plan, it plans for 5,000 new dwellings within the borough. In addition to that, there's the 2,500 at Kilnwood Vale, and there's been planning permission recently granted to the east of Crawley, to the west of Copthorne, for 500 dwellings, which I understand there is an issue with regards to whether there's capacity for that development to feed into the sewage treatment works. So in terms of the position from Thames Water that we understand it to be, there is a need for further upgrades to sewage treatment work facility at some point between 2021 and 2026. However, they feel that there is a constraint in the land of how much more they can take, and it would obviously depend on whether modern technology can improve that situation for them to actually be able to do it. There's a further complication with sewage treatment works with regards to the de-icer situation from Gatwick Airport, where they want to feed into the sewage treatment works as well. That's with a single runway scenario, so that's not even taking into account the additional from a second runway, and that would actually exceed the capacity of the sewage treatment works. So,
well, yeah, okay.
So from Crawley's perspective,
all right, there's quite a lot there.
Yes,
I think is there
for
people to comment on already.
From Crawley's perspective, I think there are a number of serious infrastructure issues that need to be resolved before we exceed the 2 additional new neighbourhoods adjacent to Crawley Borough. Thank you.
Right. Okay. There's quite a few points there that I think, let's try and break this down a bit. First of all, I'll take a couple of comments on the at Crawley study review and the sort of general infrastructure concerns, and then we'll perhaps talk about the position with regard to the airport. Just to be clear on that, are you saying that no decision should be taken on these sites with regard to, or that these sites shouldn't go ahead until the decision is known about Gatwick? Because if the second runway there were to be approved, that would stop these developments going forward as a good planning.
No, what I'm saying with regards to Gatwick is that if the developments are being designed or considered at this stage, then the information that we need to have would need to take into account the potential for a second runway. And I think in terms of the information that's coming forward from Gatwick and the Airports Commission is not yet clear as to where those lines would be. So the decision with regards to these sites should be post-decision on the second runway.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple of important matters of principle for you to address there. Do you want to comment on those points? I'll take, well, I'm not in any particular order. I'll just, not going to stop you.
On the general points in respect of further land to the west of Kilnwood Vale, the current scheme, obviously the at Crawley study did earmark that land at Kilnwood Vale was one of the options which subsequently, through the process and the joint area action plan, both Horsham and Crawley agreed and consented. And as you know, sir, we're on site there. In this respect, our current proposal coming forward for an additional extension of 750 units, I think just builds on the good planning that was earmarked and approved by the local authorities, insofar as we are clearly, over the next few years as that development proceeds, going to be having a local centre, a primary school on the site, all the necessary community and also physical infrastructure, and doubtless we'll come back to the community infrastructure and some of the other points. But in terms of the hard infrastructure, frankly, it's either already there or it's going to be in there very quickly. Now, we'll be referring in a few moments, I guess, to highways and transportation. I'll come back on that. But just one of the points raised by Crawley there was in respect of the foul water capacity of the sewage treatment works. I would completely support what was said. Our discussions with Thames Water is that they have confirmed, and the infrastructure is already in there, for our development to serve 2,500 units. We also are aware of, clearly, further development needs in the area, putting to one side what may happen at Gatwick, which will, of course, put pressure on those same sewage treatment works, as indeed has been said. And I just point you to the evidence that we put in regarding the trajectory of when we see our site coming forward. This further land we see coming forward and not making a contribution to housing numbers until the year 2022 to 23. And that's because we and the local authorities want to see deliverability of the current scheme already approved. So we see this as a medium to long-term site, and it is interesting what Crawley just said there, but it does confirm exactly our understanding of the situation, that Thames Water will need to have at some future time reinforcement to add capacity to their system, and that should be in the period leading up to 2021, which is what you've just heard. So I think from our perspective, we would say in terms of planning, if you were of the view that this was a site that should be considered through a modification, then it would be for the medium period, and you can be assured that that one issue of foul water would be sorted out by that time. Thank you.
Yeah, who's Mr. Evans?
Yeah, just look at some general comments before I'll then ask Michael Wood to deal with the sewage treatment works, and if it's the appropriate time, Mike Jones can maybe give some comments on trajectory and sort of timescales of delivery. But I know there's reference being made to the Crawley study. And the simple point on that is that, that was a document in 2009. We're in exactly the reason why we sat around this table. We're looking at the new plan period based upon new evidence. And obviously, Crawley are not too far behind the curve on that point as well. So we're in a situation now, we can't be relying on previous documents. We're being asked a question to meet current housing needs, and for the reasons we've set out, is that we are in a position to deliver that of a fairly unconstrained way, and we just don't accept the point that there are significant constraints. But I think, just for the record, in terms of the Act Crawley study, from recollection, the only real reason why land west of Ifield was not particularly pursued or encouraged was on landscape constraint issues. And obviously we can deal with that in a bit more detail later on. And just for the record, it is worth noting that back in 2005, land west of Ifield was actually the preferred location being promoted by Horsham District Council as a strategic allocation site. So they're just sort of general comments, and now maybe we can just pass on to the...
Yeah, well, and there's the issue about the airport as well. Let's try and break it down into parts, make it more manageable. Sewerage first.
Right, a meeting was held on the 12th of August with Thames Water, specifically to discuss the capacity at the sewage treatment works that serves Crawley. And Thames Water have confirmed at the time that there was, in their asset management period, scheduled work to improve the capacity of this and increase it, which at the time of the meeting minutes in 2010, that would be in place by 2013, and that would be at available capacity for these developments up to 2021. It was touched on with
well, hang on, that wouldn't include either of these two sites, would it?
And then, but they go on to say that there will then be the potential to expand it further, but the negotiations would have to happen between them and London Gatwick Airport to negotiate over space, because Thames would have the compulsory purchase, but I'm not entirely sure how that works alongside Gatwick and the land secured for future development. But it could be, Thames Water said that they could reach a land deal with Thames Water and Gatwick to secure the expansion, and as the lady over there suggested, technology is improving and they can get more efficient technology in a smaller space. So the treatment capacity should be easily met.
Well, they might. I haven't got a map of this. Is the land? So is this treatment works sort of abutting Gatwick Airport, the southern boundary of Gatwick?
I wasn't in attendance at the meeting, but
no, it's just a big question. Where is it? I don't know the area that well. I certainly haven't visited it. So
no, I haven't visited myself. I'm yet to do that.
But that doesn't.
But Thames Water
doesn't give huge confidence. I mean, given that there's a potential expansion of Gatwick, and the only way it could go is to the south, then it doesn't give much confidence that they're going to be Gatwick are going to be releasing land for an expansion of the sewage treatment works, does it?
I don't know. I'm not involved in Gatwick at all. Thames Water were confident that it could be accommodated, and they've said in the minutes that future capacity could be added further in the following AMP period.
Can I make a brief point, sir? I've not been a party to these discussions, but previous communications...
Yeah, I mean, your locus is supporting the council here, though, isn't it?
It was basically in terms of the... Yeah, it is supporting the council, but it's a point in relation to sewage treatment. And the sewage treatment works wouldn't be supporting the area to the west of Crawley, so any expansion would require significant work to get any sewage from the west of Ifield across to wherever it was treated. And the west of Ifield, they have highlighted in the past, is an issue because it's a floodplain area, and removing and treating sewage in that area was difficult.
Well, okay, can you... Yeah, Ms Brigden.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to mention that the sewage treatment works and the land that they'd be expanding into lies within the airport boundary for a second runway. So obviously those assumptions in terms of how much land they'll have available are not yet known and won't be confirmed until Gatwick have done their detailed configuration of what a second runway would look like if they were to get one, or if safeguarding's removed and they are not getting one, then it's a different position completely.
Any other comments on that? Okay, let's. What about the point about the airport expansion? Do you want to? I think that affects you more, your site more than
yes,
the other one.
I've produced a note which updates the contour situation in the light of the Airports Commission publication this week, which I'd be pleased to table.
Sorry, this is a new note.
A new note which I have brought this morning.
Well, has the council seen it?
No.
Have you sent it forward to the council?
No, it's only just been prepared.
Are you going to be able to respond to this today?
No, sir. No, not without being able to contemplate it first. I thought we had agreed that we were preparing the plan on the basis of the information that was before us, and we were agreed that the plan would need to be reviewed in the context of any second runway situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to take. Well, it would just delay things. I'd have to give it to the council and ask for your written comments.
Okay, I guess then all that I can say is that the contours that we used in the planning for the land west of Ifield were contours that were produced in 2003 by ERCD, and the northern boundary of the shown developed land coincided with the 57 dBA contour.
Yeah, I think I've seen. Is that on the master planning? There are some constraint lines on. I've seen a noise contour plan.
It is likely to be, and that would place all of that development within what was called noise exposure category A under PPG 24. And
yeah, just remind me, does that still... I haven't done a noise case since the NP.
PPG 24 was... Is
that still an appendix to the NPPG?
It was withdrawn in 2012. The National Planning Policy Framework didn't replace it with any numerical guidance. That is still awaited. So many local...
What's in the NPPG? Forgive me. I mean, I'm sure I know I should know, but I don't, because I haven't done a noise issue for some time.
General statements of intent with regard to preserving quiet and the sort of language approach to noise control rather than numerical approach. And it also refers to thresholds where there is an observable effect from noise, and where the threshold is for that and where that becomes significant. But the research and the numbers that reflect those criteria have yet to be provided. So many local authorities still use the noise exposure categories in PPG 24 as a basis for their planning policy.
To interpret the words of NPPG. Okay, I'll check those. So just, I've only got half of that down. So the 57 dB contour, do you want to refer me to one of your documents on this? Just so I can see it and make a note for my note.
I think the orange master plan document, which was a second appendix of our Matter 14 statement. Page 12.
You've got a master plan on page 3. Oh, right. That's in the introduction.
Can I ask the that these contours were prepared, because Gatwick prepared some later ones just over a year ago that the local groups have been challenging. There was a recent survey that was done by Cagney for noise contours that highlights that even the latest contours provided by Gatwick are incorrect, and that by Gatwick's own emissions, the latest contours were done on the basis of computer modelling rather than direct measurement. And the group Cagney commissioned an independent report by noise consultants who did actual readings and remapped the data, which showed a far worse condition than was showed by Gatwick on its own reports, which is actually worse than the earlier Gatwick report of 2005, I think was the earlier one.
Okay, we can comment on that point. I've got I think it's on page 9, the vision is a plan that I've got here with a 57 dB contour on it. Is that? They're not, my documents aren't paginated, actually. Some of them are. Oh, what, on the... well, I'm looking at Appendix 2, and I've got to page 9, the vision. I've got a plan on there. And that shows a 57 dB contour running through just the very northern part of your site. It's identified in orange line.
Yeah, so just to be clear...
Is that the best diagram to use? If there's another one, just direct me to it.
Well, the other one says on page 12 of the opportunities and constraints, the orange front cover of the master plan suite.
Well, which...
So this is the front cover of
it's
the
called
orange
Opportunities
document.
and Constraints.
And page 12 of that document. So it looks like that.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find where that is. How far?
It's in Appendix 2, sir.
Okay, yeah. No, I've got my own. Make sure I've got it for starters. Okay, I've got it.
So that shows the two scenarios, sir. So you've got the existing runway, and then at the bottom, which we're obviously parking for the purposes of this exercise, is the second runway point. But the critical issue is the 57 dB was the conservative approach that has been suggested by the councils, but the North East sector decision subsequently ruled that development within the 60 dB was the appropriate level. 66, sorry. But effectively what you're showing is that it's only the very northernmost part of the site that is being affected in any shape or form under the current runway configuration. And it's clear from our master planning that we're only proposing development very much on the southern end. And if you go to the page before, sir, then you've got very clear indication about the extent of land that we are promoting for the master plan development area, which is well below any of those noise contours.
Sorry, page 4 of which?
The page before, sorry. On the same document you're looking at on page 12. So
page 4 of that constraints
10 and 11, sir.
Well, I've seen that somewhere else as well. I'm just trying to get the...
Well, I think it's a bit of a misleading point, really, because the area, whilst we've got a much wider land ownership or land interest, the master plans deliberately has been restricted to the southernmost area.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I've seen that, and I'm just checking you've got this down on other different documents, but if it's contested that are you saying that the positions change with regard to noise contours or not?
The Airports Commission published new contours this week, as you mentioned earlier, And the contour shape will be found to have changed and changed the situation slightly.
I think I've got a taste. I mean, I can't. It's open to me to take new information. It's just a question of how we deal with it, really. It's a bit stupid for me to go on old information if there's new stuff that's available, and that it just means that I've got to allow people to comment on it, really. So the council haven't seen this or haven't looked at it?
So we do have the contour maps which were published on Tuesday, the 11th. They're at such a scale that it's actually extremely difficult. We have looked at them, but it's actually extremely difficult to establish where the contour lines come on in relation to the site that's being discussed. And also this is obviously for consultation at the moment. So they are predicted contour lines. So the status of that updated information is something which is for consultation until February.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I can take comments like that into account. I mean, I just think maybe I ought to see it. I think I will see it. Have you got a plan with it?
Yes, I have, yes.
Have we got... where's Chris gone? Is anyone... Who else might need a copy of this? Have you seen it? Well, you're with the council, so I appreciate your contributions, but it's to the council's seen it. Have you got a spare one?
I do have, yes, sir.
Have you seen it, Mr. Wilcox?
I think
Chris'
position on this is interested, tourist occasionally. But just while that's being...
I need to take... I've got the main... I think I've got the main point. It's just that if it's being questioned... Yes, please, I'd like to see one. I'll take... Can you give a copy to the programme officer in the break? I'll take it as an inquiry document. We've just got the plans, and I'll just have to say to the council and anyone else, if anyone else wants to comment on this. Crikey!
Can I make a?
It's going to open up all sorts of. I'm just thinking aloud about procedural issues here.
Can I make a cautionary note, sir? That although as you say, I'm in support of the council's position on this. In terms of the noise contour figures, there's a lot of new information coming out. I haven't looked at that very latest one from Gatwick, but I have been very deeply involved with other groups through Russell Parish Council, where we're working with Gatwick on occasions to ensure that the noise contours are accurate and valid. And as I say, there has been a separate independent study based on real measurements that establishes that the Gatwick contours are actually worse than they were proposing, and they have got worse from their earlier submissions as well. So.
Okay, look, stop. I'm not going to take this for now. What I was talking about was the publicly available consultation plan that Mrs. Childs has just talked about. The key principle here is there... The council actually aren't saying that... are you saying that I shouldn't allocate this if I think it's a good idea? I'm just talking hypothetically here, procedurally. If I think it's a good idea to have another site in for a longer term, medium term or whatever, I think is what your position is anyway, isn't it? Because of the golf course issue, from what I've read. That shouldn't be done because if the second airport goes ahead, it would make this site undevelopable from a noise point of view.
So I don't think any of us are in the position to be able to know whether it would be developable or not. The council's joint case is simply that, as we're going to be reviewing the plan in 5 years' time anyway, when we have a decision on the second runway, we would like to be able to take all of the most up-to-date information that's available then to determine the suitability of the site.
Well, I think that, all right, I'll let the council finish and then you to come back. I think what you've said obviously is disputed by the developers.
I think the other issue with regards to the second runway option potential for Gatwick Airport is, and in terms of how the development would interact with the environment, is very much on with regards to the actual land take to the north and the impact that has on the road network. And it's matters like that which haven't yet been resolved or modelled to understand that there would be no road network going up to the north, because that is where the second runway would be. So on the master plans that have been produced and the modelling work that's been done through county, obviously that gets us more into the realms of the transport modelling, but just in terms of the Gatwick Airport uncertainty, it is another critical issue that without having that information from Gatwick Airport, we can't really be in a position to know how that would then impact on the road network within Crawley as traffic is diverted in a different way to what was predicted.
We'll come on to that. I'm just going to park that, come back to that again. We can't know what might happen, I think Ms Charles said, and that you can't be sure that if the second runway goes ahead, that this site is developable.
If I could just make the point that the plans that have been put forward have been developed on the basis that the noise level wouldn't exceed 57 dB, the threshold of noise exposure category B, and without that on the same basis, on the basis of the same contours, that planning permission was granted at the northeast sector for development up to 66 dBA for 1,900 new homes, which is 9 dB.
Right, so that's
9 dB.
66 on the projected contour for the second runway.
The same set of ERCD contours in 2003. So development is progressing there on the basis of no property being exposed to more than 66, 9 dB higher than is proposed for this land.
If I may just come back in just on that matter of the North East sector development, the decision was certainly contrary to Crawley Borough Council's position and Gatwick Airport's position with regards to noise contours. Advice and in terms of the evidence from our environmental health officers, they are very concerned still about the 66 dB, but the inspector made the decision based on it being very unlikely that there would be a second runway at Gatwick, and therefore that the need for housing overrode that. We're in a different position now with Gatwick having been identified as one of the options for a second runway, and we are...
When was that decision taken then? Just to give
2006.
Me a bit of... 2010. There were two inquiries, one in 2006 and one in 2009.
I think it's also worth pointing out that it was actually a Secretary of State decision in the end, in 2010.
Are you, against an inspector's recommendation?
No, in line with the inspector.
Right, okay.
Can I ask if any readings? Can I ask if any noise readings have actually been taken on this site, or are they just relying on contour maps?
We haven't taken any noise readings. The latest contours produced by the Airports Commission will be up to date in terms of modelling technique and accuracy of assessment.
Well, I'm not going to take your document because that could lead me into procedural problems, and I think I'm getting enough for what I need without it. But I would like to see, if that's a document in the public domain, I think it's right that I should see that consultation plan. So can I have a quick look at it, and B, can I have a copy in the break, and I'll take comments on it. Ms Charles said, Mr Woods, that it was hard to decipher Do you have any comments? I'm just looking at it. Do you have any comments on that? Do you think it doesn't actually line up with the 57, does it? Number one.
I'm sorry, sir. Is this the area of the developable land?
The airport. Who's this come from? It's got notes on it as well that I shouldn't really see, but who produced it? Airports Commission Technical Report on Noise. It was published today, Tuesday, was it? Okay, and you must have seen this.
Yes, indeed.
Mrs. Child said she didn't think it was easy to see whether it changed anything.
We've
compared to the information that you've submitted, which is based on 2003 data. Do you agree with that or not? That point?
The point that it can't be compared.
Well, no, that it's difficult to see.
It is difficult to see at that scale. We're able to transcribe the digital data onto a map and to make it easier to see.
Where's the digital data? The digital data is in the report as well, is it?
We hold some digital data for the site.
Well, but that might be different data to this.
No, we have the same data.
Any comment on that?
A question that's in the public domain.
No, it's not to you, Mr. Sallows. You're supporting the council, so.
So I'm not in a position to dispute where the lines are because we simply don't have the information. I just wondered where that digital information was gained because we haven't had access to that.
I will have to consult my airport colleagues and come back to you on that particular point. It is possible to blow the contours up on a PDF file and get a very good impression of where the lines are.
I would suggest if that's the way it's done, sir, then there is an element of sensitivity testing in terms of enlarging plans.
I'll have a copy of that, please, without your notes. And that can be made available as a document. Are you saying, just to sort of try and get back to the point on this about how it affects things, are you saying that it doesn't materially change the position and that your developable area shown on the master plan, in your opinions and from your research, is still going to be outside of the 57 dB contour?
No, I'm not saying that. As a result of different route assumptions and also the updating of aircraft data, the shape of the contour has changed. So some of the site will be exposed to levels in excess of 57. By a very small amount. Sorry, what? The small amount of the site, or a small amount? Small number of decibels. Small. So, but within 2 decibels of the earlier contours. Yes, of the developable area of the site.
That's some of the developable area on the master plan. So some of that could be within an area up to 59 dB.
I believe so, sir, yes.
And that's based on your interpretation of this information that's come forward from the Airports Commission?
That's correct.
Right, Mr. Evans, from a planning point of view, do you have any comments on that?
No,
the
point's really
does
obvious.
it materially affect your case that the site shown on your master plan is developable even if a second runway goes ahead?
No, I mean, I think the fundamental point is, as we've raised, the current master plan was showing in excess of, sort of 3,000 dwellings. Any slight impact on that, we were talking maybe a couple of hundred units, but there's still a very large developable area to come forward, and I would have thought it could be easily controlled, relevant criteria put in place to ensure that the developable area meets the relevant DBA requirements.
Okay, and the council to comment on that, and then I'm going to move on to another topic.
I don't want to labour the point. I just simply think that there is enough. There are so many unknowns and so many variables that we're really not able to establish at the moment exactly where those contours might be, and only a slight change actually could make a considerable difference. I'm not saying that the site couldn't come forward because of the noise contours. I'm simply saying I just don't believe that we're in a position at the moment to be able to make that decision.
Okay. Let's move back onto some of the other points then that we I don't think the promoters' side had a chance to comment on all the infrastructure points that Ms Brigden made. So the sewage treatment, did you comment on that? Do you want to make any comments on that?
I think we did have some comments on that.
Oh, you have commented on that, but you...
Sorry, I just wanted to add something, if I may. We did discuss with Thames Water about the future capacity beyond 2021, and Thames Water, I'll just read from the minutes here, they've said there is additional scope to expand the capacity of the sewage treatment from the current design capacity, which would be included in AMP6 or AMP7. AMP6 is due to commence 2015 to 2010. 2020, and then AMP7 will be 2021 onwards. However, Ofwat regulates the design horizon for the treatment works growth, and it's been set for the current period. It's not possible to invest in the capacity expansion beyond 2021 until AMP6 starts, which is next year. But Thames Water believe that further upgrades at the sewage treatment works will be possible post AMP5. How they do that is down to them, unfortunately, but they were that was their stance at the time, and I believe it's still current now.
Well, yeah, I mean, the point, I don't know, the point is, is there any potential long-term constraint, that's of any real concern? Do you have anything further to add on that, Ms Brigden? And then I'm going to move on.
Yes, thank you. As part of the work that we've undertaken with regards to our local plan review and in terms of the Horsham and the strategic sites work that we've been doing across the North and West Sussex area, we undertook a check with the infrastructure providers in relation to the Crawley sites, the sites that were identified through the Crawley study, and asked for a refresh. And on the back of that, on the 5th of September, I received a letter from Thames Water identifying that there is constraints with regards to the sewage treatment works beyond what they have got planned for, which is the 7,000 homes capacity. And as I mentioned before, that any further expansion is subject to land availability, and there is some substantial unknowns with regards to the capacity that Gatwick Airport may be requiring from that as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I add one extra thing, sir? That we're talking about two distinct sites here. We're talking about west of Ifield and the west of Gilmard Vale. The west of Ifield site has been identified by Southern Water in the past as having problems with actually getting waste out of that area. So there's two issues. There's the issue of capacity for Crawley as a whole, and the issue of the removal of sewage from specific sites. And this is
well, the council haven't taken that on. I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Sellers, it's really difficult. You can't, you're sort of introducing new evidence there.
So the opposition. So I'm just.
Well, they're not. I'm not allowing them to without giving people a chance to comment on it.
I mean,
that's
their submission.
Do the council want to take that point on? So that I can ask the developers to respond to it? Is it an issue that you're aware of?
It's not been raised to me directly from Thames Water with regards to that particular site or location.
Sorry, could I just question something? You mentioned Southern Water. This site is served by Thames. Is that that's what you meant?
The water supply is Southern.
No, we're talking about foul drainage.
Yeah, Thames. Sorry, I apologise. That was my mistake. It was Thames.
Okay, I'm going to move on. General terms about highways infrastructure. I think there are some points to be made. Do you want to? Let's hear the developer's side first. What's your case on that? Is there any constraint that would prevent either of these sites going forward in terms of highways infrastructure? And I've read about this Western Relief Road. As Brigden mentioned, that if Gatwick goes ahead with a second runway, that might affect the ability to meet highways expansion needs, or further construction needed to deal with traffic. Any comments on that?
Yes, sir. We fundamentally don't have a need for the Western Relief Road. I think the Crawley study and earlier studies which have been undertaken have suggested that the site may well do, but in the latest work we've done along with Mr Owen from County, although we're not going to prejudice the delivery of a relief road should it be required, we certainly don't need it to come forward.
Yeah. Mr Wilcox, any comments?
In terms of the Western Relief Road, I think it's salutary. This was, as it affects Kilnwood Vale, there is reserve land that was safeguarded for exactly the purpose that, should it be needed, that Western Relief Road, insofar as it goes through land under our control, could be accommodated. However, there's a time limit on that, and I think it's salutary that in this emerging plan that's before you, there is no requirement from, presumably, the county highway, let alone the local authority, to continue that safeguarding. So, to be blunt, I think the issue of the Western Relief Road, so far as it affects these sites, has actually gone.
Okay. Mr Hemmings?
Perhaps I could just clarify, just as a point of fact, the Joint Air Action Plan remains part of the development plan. We are not reviewing it. It has not been subject to review as part of the Horsham District Planning Framework, so the Joint Air Action Plan is still a live and current document.
Perhaps if I could start, and I'll probably ask my colleague Chris here to sort of interject. I think on the Western Relief Road, just to start, I think the gentleman's correct. I think in the Section 106 agreement, I think there is safeguarding for a limited period of time. I couldn't tell you offhand exactly what that time limit is, but it is limited to probably a period within the time frame that we're talking about here. Regardless of that, the length of that safeguarding, that does not. I think that the length of that safeguarding should not be any kind of reflection on the potential need for a Crawley Western Relief Road, which may well need to come forward in the future to mitigate the impact of development and potential airport expansion. And so from the County Council's perspective, we will be seeking to ensure that safeguarding is maintained, so that if and when that infrastructure is needed, it can come forward. Just to sort of make another point on Gatwick Runway 2, because I think this is probably kind of a quick one to deal with. As far as I'm aware, no work has been carried out to look at the impact of either of these sites alongside an expansion at Gatwick Airport. That work has not been done, but of course the plan that's before us here assumes that we are working with a one runway, two terminal configuration. So on that basis, some transport work has been carried out, certainly to look at the west of Ifield site, but I'm quite conscious of the position that both promoters put forward at the start of this session, which is that their position is that these sites are to come forward in addition to development in the Crawley certainly in addition to the Horsham district planning framework, and I'm not aware that any technical work has been carried out to assess the sites cumulatively with the development that's planned in the district planning framework. That work would need to be carried out if the sites were to come forward in cumulatively. Having said that, some site-specific work has been carried out. Discussions have been taking place, certainly with the west of Ifield developers, and I think my colleague Chris will perhaps introduce that work if you're happy to hear it.
Okay, yes please.
The County Council has been engaging with consultants for the West of Ifield Consortium for quite some while, and that most recently, over the last 9 months or so, has been in connection with the production of a preliminary transport assessment, which has used agreed methodology, which we have agreed is suitable for assessing a proposed development plan allocation, and it's also used the County Council's Crawley Saturn transport model for actually carrying out modelling of the impacts of the west of Ifield development, taking account of committed sites in the area. These do not, of course, as my colleague has just said, include the proposed allocations in the Horsham District Planning Framework, but they do include sites, for example, like the strategic sites at Crawley, in other words, Kilnwood Vale, and North East Sector or Forge Wood. So that's the basis on which the model testing has been carried out, and the basis of the results that have been fed through to ourselves at the County Council.
But just to be clear, so they haven't included the North Horsham allocation?
No, they have not, no. On the basis that those are proposed allocations currently, but are not, don't meet the definition of committed developments.
No. But, okay, carry on.
And basically that work has been going on, as I say, for some while, and we have reached a stage which is documented in the position statement produced by the consultants for the consortium in October of this year, which you may have seen in the documentation.
I think it's here somewhere. Yeah.
That's provided by Montague Evans, I believe.
Is that which appendix is that? Sorry? Yes, appendix 1. Oh yes, no, I did read this, sorry. Sorry, I've read such a lot of stuff. I can't remember all of it, but don't quite understand why, if you were you're promoting the site on the basis of an addition to the Horsham site, you didn't take into account the potential impacts of North Horsham.
I think you've got to model a point in time, and it's looking at what is considered to be committed and consented developments at that time, and obviously that's what the model was taking care of on a sort of a more strategic level.
But this is okay, but it doesn't really help me. So, okay, but my question is, are there any transport and highways constraints if your site comes forward in addition to the planned sites, which is what your case is? Can you comment on that?
Well, certainly further work would be needed to establish what impacts, additional impacts might arise on top of, if this development proposal at West of Ifield went ahead, in addition to the proposed allocations in the district plan.
So we just don't know.
So at the moment we don't know.
Just to make a point.
Sorry.
This situation is, I suppose, is very similar, if not identical, to the one which has been presented in the last few hearing sessions for other sites, which are being presented as in addition to development coming forward in the district planning framework. So, east of Southwater, I believe you discussed a site at Billingshurst yesterday.
West of Southwater. Billingshurst we did, yeah. I mean, I don't think the council raised any potential highways. We talked about a highway capacity on the A272 because I asked a question about that, but from the statement, but that doesn't. Well, okay, that doesn't seem quite the same as some of the issues here. For example, from what I've read in the documentation already available to me.
The situation, of course, with west of Southwater the other day was very different because both positions were being put forward to you, that it should come forward as an alternative site and in addition.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
So
this is in addition. All I can really note is further work's needed to assess, unless the developers want to give me, make any comments on that, to assess the position if both come forward, if this comes forward in addition to the North Horsham site. Okay. Any comments?
No, I think generally, if we were to consider that site, the travel patterns are very different. They're very, we've assessed quite a different study area to what North Horsham sites would be looking at. So I think in terms of overall impact, I think it wouldn't be significant for our site.
Would or wouldn't?
Wouldn't be.
But you haven't done a full assessment, so you don't...
No.
You'd have to do an assessment to check that position
Of
out.
course, and some of it's about the data that's available as well. We don't know what their distribution patterns necessarily are and so on, and what their assumptions are for their site. So we can only go on the data that's available to us.
No, but some of the, you weren't here, but some of those assumptions were questioned, and we did have quite a discussion about highways at the end of quite a long day. As those of you who are here will know. Okay. Anything else that anyone wants to say about transport infrastructure?
Excuse me. As far as Kilnwood Vale goes, I'd just like to say, yes, the highway work and transportation work that we have done has not taken into account the cumulative effects of looking at North Horsham. And I have to say, we're in a bit of a problem, I think, in trying to deal with that, because, of course, we're talking here about transport in the round, not just cars. And as you well know, and I won't revisit it,
I'm
but
not going
just
to go
mark
back
it,
into the station issue.
absolutely.
No.
You know, we actually have an approval for a station that informed our TA. Now, of course, if things were to change, potentially, then, well, all bets are off. And how on earth do we put evidence in front of you, whether it's with an army of consultants or not, to actually inform that decision for you? All I would say, praying aid for our site, is we're going for 750 units, which would be an add-on to an existing development that has got very sustainable pedestrian cycle links that are already going in, and you can see those at grade, that we already have got a good public transport system for the houses that are already there, and there's the ability to add to that in due course. That's part of the fastway system that would go through to Crawley, to major employment areas, the town centre of Crawley, and of course the airport. And God willing, if the station does appear on our site, of course that's a major impact to providing choice for modal shift of people away from car-borne traffic. But I have to say, I have some difficulty in trying to advise consultants to model all of those eventualities. I realise that doesn't help you, sir, in making your decision, but I would pray and aid those other ability of our site to make better use of the existing non-car-borne forms of transport.
Yeah, okay. I don't think the council's taken any point, are they, about sustainability? Well, maybe you might want to comment on that, please. Comments about sustainability with regard to pedestrian cycle routes, bus service provision.
Perhaps I could start off, and then my colleagues from Crawley might want to add to what I say. The development of the Joint Area Action Plan and the development which is now Kilnwood Vale certainly does include good linkages for pedestrians and cyclists and access to the bus network. And it plugs into the links through into Crawley. However, the western extension does then move to an area that is rather remote from the centre of Crawley. That was an issue when we were actually allocating the land, its remoteness from the town centre. That was an issue of great debate at the examination, and to extend that in a westwards direction clearly is going to exacerbate that issue.
Yeah, in terms of the physical distances from the western edge of the Kilnwood Vale extension that's been proposed to get to Crawley Town Centre, it would be 5.4 kilometres, and to get into the Kilnwood Vale neighbourhood centre, it would be 1.4 kilometres. To get to the current secondary schools available to residents in that area in Crawley, Holy Trinity, which is a C of E school, Church of England school, is 3.5 kilometres, and the Ifield Community College would be 4.1 kilometres. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that? I mean, I'll take this with regard to west of Ifield as well.
I think, sir, with due respect, I've got to take issue with those. As we all know, there is going to be no secondary school. There is not a need for one on our existing site or with the extended site. And we know how these things work. There will be buses that will serve those schools, and they will go and pick people up. So frankly, the distance is rather irrelevant in this case. I'll give you an example. I live in Westerham, and kids from our village travel over 20 miles to get down to Tunbridge Wells. So, to be honest with you, I think that is, grasping at straws. In terms of remoteness from Crawley Town Centre, I think what is more pertinent is the distance from the majority of the houses, not the houses right on the very edge, the majority of the occupants from this extension to good access to public transport. That will be well within all of the normal requirements. Good access to a new primary school, good access to a new local centre. And that's where they will intended to do most of their day-to-day shopping and that. The distance of further going to Crawley or even to Horsham or other retail centres of choice, frankly, I think again is somewhat immaterial. To be blunt, probably a load of people will actually drive around the M25 to Bluewater. So, let's get this in proportion.
Okay, anyone want to make any comments on West of Ifield about sustainability?
Sorry. Could I just ask a question for a point of clarification there? A statement's just been made that as a result of an additional 750 homes, there is no need for an additional secondary school. And I'd like to know where that information has been drawn from, because I'm not aware that the County Council has been engaged in any discussion on that matter.
I was hoping we would come to education as a separate matter later on, but I'm happy to answer it now.
Let's park it.
Okay.
So, all right, I'm not forgetting about it. Let's just I've got to let's just try and wrap up on, I'll probably take a quick break actually, and then we'll wrap up on the sort of transport sustainability issues. West of Ifield comments,
so yeah,
and the council comment on both.
Our final comment on that really, just to give you an idea of the sustainability of the area adjacent to our site already. The eastern boundary of the site has a bus at least every 12 minutes which runs into Crawley Town Centre. The services currently terminate within Ifield and turn around, which is obviously an excellent opportunity for us to then just feed off the back of that and extend services into our site. We've already had a number of conversations with Metrobus, who are the commercial operator in the area, and also put forward quite a comprehensive point-in-time strategy to the County Council. And I think both Metrobus and the County Council are happy that our site could be commercially sustainable in quite a short period of time in respect of bus services.
Okay. Any other comments on walking, cycling?
Certainly, yes.
Proximity, transport sustainability in relation to other services?
Again, we've put forward quite a comprehensive sort of strategy, just looking at pedestrian and cycle connectivity into the area and how our site can actually facilitate movement through the wider area. Certainly, we've already looked at how our master plan can incorporate segregated cycle routes and so on, and how that can connect to local services. I think importantly, it also reduces the need for residents sort of in the hinterlands of our site to travel as well, because there will be some local services coming forward as part of our proposal, which again reduces the overall need to travel.
Does the council want to comment on that, please? Any comments on sustainability and transport before we break? Anything else you want to add?
We've got nothing to add, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll take a short 10-minute break, please, and resume at 25 to 12. And we'll come back on the other infrastructure matters that have just been raised. Oh, sorry, I left this on. Okay, everyone, sorry, could you take your seats, please? Education and health services, before we go on to landscape impact and then deliverability and any other issues. I think it's working all right, taking both sites sort of at the same time. Virtually, many of these are common issues, so we'll proceed on that basis. You raised a point about secondary schools that Mr. Hemmings or someone from the County Council might want to comment on, please.
Well, I think, as I said before, I'm not aware that any discussions have taken place with County Council about how education would be provided for if these sites were to come forward in isolation or together. So I'd be interested to hear from the promoters how they envisage education being provided.
Okay, Mr. Wilcox, you raised this. You can go first.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Obviously, we have had a lot of discussion with County Council over our current scheme that is being built out at present. And just to clarify, the master plan and the outline approval seeks to provide a two-form entry primary school on the site, but with reserved land to extend it to a three-form entry if the need were to arise. So our position on this, sir, is that reserve land is already embedded in the current scheme being built, and therefore additional capacity resulting from, additional need resulting from the additional land could be accommodated on that same site. With respect to secondary schools, we have, in fairness, we have not had specific discussions with the county over this on the additional land. That is true. We're taking the same view which is consistent with our current scheme, and that is that, bearing in mind the location and the current capacity, and I know that would have to be viewed at the time of existing secondary schools, we anticipate that the need would be met off-site and that there would be a requirement for contributions towards any additional places that may be required at that time.
Well, Okay, so you haven't discussed it, so you don't know whether there is capacity, taking into account all the other developments.
Well, what we don't know, sir, is we don't know the capacity when we believe this site would come on stream, which would be, as I said earlier on, post 2021.
Yeah. Okay, but there's an arrangement for your existing scheme, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Evans, or whoever's dealing with that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Yarko.
Thank you. In respect of primary education, you'll have seen from our master plan that in accordance with Crawley's adopted SPD, we intend to provide 2.5 hectares of land, which would be for primary education and would also include provision for early years learning, which we understand there is a deficit of in Crawley. In terms of secondary education, very much the same position as Mr. Wilcox. West of Ifield is not envisaged to come on stream until post-2020, and at that point we would review the capacity within the secondary education system of Crawley and envisage making necessary payments in order to fund education at a secondary and sixth form level.
Any comments on that, Mr. Hemmings?
I think what that kind of shows to me is that there is a lack of kind of detail at the moment about how secondary education would be provided alongside these sites. I kind of accept the plans that are being brought forward for primary education, which seem sort of reasonably acceptable at sort of face value. But more detailed work would need to be done on secondary education provision. As we heard in one of the hearings the other day, there are already secondary pupils being bussed out of Crawley to schools in the Horsham area, which was subject of great debate around the location of a new school at North Horsham. So at this stage, it strikes me that it is taking it a step too far, really, to assume that contributions can be made to address this issue. Actually, there is quite a significant difference between contributing to expansion of an existing school, and we've got no evidence to suggest that that's possible, compared to providing a new secondary school. We're talking about very significant differences in terms of cost. As from what I'm hearing, I don't think the evidence is there to suggest that we can be sure education provision for secondary will be provided.
Well, are you saying that there's a known capacity constraint taking into account cumulative permitted development around Crawley at the moment, post-2020?
Well, I mean, we're certainly aware of the current situation, and there are plans in place to provide the number of school places that will be needed for current commitments and planned development coming forward at Kilnwood Vale, at North East Sector and other sites within Crawley Borough. But these sites are being presented as in addition to. And we cannot just assume that sites in addition to can be just slotted in and there will be an education solution.
Well, no, but are you bringing any evidence to me that you've got very real concerns that there is not capacity?
If I may, we have had correspondence from the County Council Education in relation to the potential additional sites within at Crawley. And as Darryl mentioned, it is absolutely that's the case. Our primary schools are currently at 90% capacity and our secondary schools are currently at 88% capacity. And within the position statement that we've prepared up with the Education Department for our infrastructure plan, for our submission local plan, it confirms that over the plan period it has been identified that some of the additional provision required will need to be provided in the form of a new secondary school. And it goes on to say that this may involve cross-border cooperation with neighbouring authorities. Thank you, sir.
Right, so it doesn't say that you're going to provide it within Crawley then, on any of your sites?
There, as I understand it, there isn't the capacity within Crawley to build a new secondary school, and the current schools and their expansion is already taken into account with regards to the projections that we already have. Thank you.
Is this on the basis of your housing shortfall being provided near Crawley? When you're talking about this need for an additional secondary school may be required?
It's on the basis of the current projections that the Education Department have with regards to the school needs in terms of what's currently going through the system.
Not additional. So, irrespective of what happens with, for example, these sites or any other sites outside of your boundaries, you're saying you might need another secondary school anyway to cope for natural growth of the school-age population?
Yes, although that's tempered with dependent on where the unmet need is met, as households move out of Crawley, where the development is. If it's immediately adjacent to Crawley, then the impact is going to be on the Crawley schools. whereas if it's more dispersed across the North and West Sussex housing market area, then that impact, as I understand, would be picked up at different schools. So from what our local plan requires, it's already at capacity, and as I understand it, they're currently going through their consultation with regards to the expansion of the existing schools that are there.
Yeah, well, that's why I prefaced my question the way I did, because I'm going to hear on Tuesday that some of your need possibly may be met at a new market town quite some way down to the south, in which case presumably the secondary education requirements of that would be met there rather than in Crawley. But from what I heard the other day about west of Southwater, not necessarily.
What we've heard, what's been presented in the Horsham District Planning Framework and what is being presented in the Crawley local plan is planned development across the northern part of the district that will generate a need for an additional secondary school in the future. The proposal that's being presented and tested here is for that secondary school to be located at the North Horsham site allocation. That, I think,
right. Well, no, yeah, okay. So I was... well, that had just come into my mind, actually. So your comment, Ms. Brigden, about this need for an additional one, is that sort of... was it based on that premise that it's going to come forward at North Horsham?
As I understand it, that the current situation, if the development goes ahead in North Horsham and Crawley builds to the level that it's proposing to build in the local plan, then yes, I think that would be accommodated within the North Horsham secondary school. The schools
so there wouldn't be a need for another secondary school in Crawley?
Not in Crawley, but there would be need for secondary school to meet Crawley's needs, but it wouldn't necessarily be within Crawley. So if the one within North Horsham, as I understand it, would currently pick up the planned needs, as Darryl said, for Crawley and the North Horsham area within that school. However, if there was additional schools, if there was additional development, then that may not necessarily be accommodated within the school that's being planned for within North Horsham.
That's another slightly different position, I think, to what you said originally. I mean, let's just try and be quite clear on this. For the planned development in Crawley, in your plan period, and taking into account needs for further housing in Crawley that you can't meet within your boundaries and might have to go elsewhere, you seem to be saying that the proposals at the moment would include the expansion of existing schools within Crawley and assuming a new secondary school goes into North Horsham if it goes ahead, that everything would be at capacity, and that any additional development, including these promoted sites, you're not sure where that could be provided. Is that your case?
In a nutshell, I think that's right, yes.
Okay. And that precludes any potential for expansion then at the North Horsham school? Does that take into account any potential for expansion there?
My understanding, and this was obviously discussed the other day, is that the site that's being identified in the North Horsham site allocation is for a 6 FE secondary school, with potential for it to be expanded to an 8 FE. Now,
right, so that comment about capacity being at limit includes assumptions that that school would go ahead at an 8-form capacity.
The reason that the potential to expand to an 8 FE has been identified is because of the cumulative need which is being generated in Horsham and Crawley, as I understand it. What I don't necessarily have the figures for is whether that is expected to be at full capacity with both Horsham and Crawley development coming forward cumulatively. But what we've not heard is how these sites can be accommodated, because the discussions haven't taken place.
No, I appreciate that, but you're making statements about that which now what you've just said calls into question whether the 2-form expansion might be available to meet the need from these 2 sites.
I don't think I've said that the 2-form can be available for these 2 sites. I've said...
No, but my question was, I'm only trying to be clear about what you are saying. What I wrote down, which I'm now testing, is planned expansion for Crawley and the unmet needs within Crawley, plus the unmet needs of Crawley, which might have to be met outside, plus the needs of Horsham, would lead to a position where there's no capacity at secondary level within Crawley, and assuming that the 6th-form entry school at North Horsham goes ahead, and also assuming that that goes ahead with an additional 2 forms capacity. What I think you were then saying was you weren't sure whether that was a correct statement with regard to the 6+2 extra forms at North Horsham.
I think the point that actually I'm a little unsure on is what you're referring to as unmet need from Crawley. Because we are planning for the development that's coming forward in the Horsham District Planning Framework and the development that's coming forward in the Crawley Local Plan. If there is unmet need which is not being planned for across those 2 plan areas, then we haven't got a plan for that, because we're not being asked to plan for that at this point in time.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know
so we're
how
back on
much
duty
that
to
is.
cooperate here, but then, okay, all right, I can understand, maybe it's the way I phrased it, but I understand that position. The council's position is, and Crawley's not objecting to Horsham's plan, are you? So the council's position is that there's some headroom in its housing numbers to meet some of the needs from Crawley, if not all of them, and that the North Horsham site, together with others and other development in Horsham, would meet that need. So there is an unknown here. I'm just trying to get back to the position on capacity. So at a figure of 650 per annum in Horsham, and I can't remember your figure, but whatever it is that you've planned for, what's your annual? 3,000, isn't it, over the plan period? Sorry, which leaves a 2,000 shortfall.
It's a 3,000 dwelling shortfall over the plan period.
Beg your pardon.
Per annum, it's about 300 dwellings per annum.
Yeah. But anyway, what you are providing for within Crawley and what Horsham's providing for, you're saying that there's no capacity at secondary level for schools which could be expanded in Crawley, but would be up to a limit, taking those figures into account, plus the 650 at Horsham. And that assumes a 6th form entry at North Horsham. Right?
The 6th sixth form entry at
Sorry,
North
a sixth form, not a sixth form.
Sixth form of entry at North Horsham is associated with the Horsham District Planning Framework.
Right. So that then leaves the question of if there's room for, and that includes a sixth form entry built at North Horsham, not an eighth form entry built at North Horsham.
That's correct. There's potential to expand, which allows us to address the wider needs of the area, including those coming from Crawley.
Well, no, but they're included, you say, they're included within Horsham's figure.
No, the slightly confusing thing here is we've got children being generated within Crawley that will need school places. So the development that's coming forward through the Crawley local plan will generate children which will need to go to secondary school, and part of the solution for that is the expanded North Horsham school.
Well, this is what I'm trying to boil down to. If you're talking about the needs, yes, right. There's Crawley population and housing needs, and some of those needs might be met by expanding schools in Crawley, and the committed development would be going. The need arising from those developments would be met within Crawley, plus would be met in North Horsham, which would also meet Horsham's needs and the locally generated needs within Horsham projected forward, etc. The figures, now those figures, the Crawley housing figures, the projected need within Crawley, the Horsham figure, the council say meets the unmet need from Crawley as well in the Horsham district.
Well, in which case, an expanded secondary school at North Horsham addresses the unmet need from Crawley, if that's the council's position.
Well, I'm not sure that is the council's position. That's my point, because I've had other comments saying that there's nothing like enough. I mean, that's why I'm quite interested to know what the capacity might be. I mean, I appreciate it's very difficult trying to look 10 years ahead with all of this, but what I'm trying to find out is whether this two-form potential expansion in North Horsham is extra capacity above what's planned in Crawley and what's planned in Horsham, which includes, as you say, meeting some of Crawley's unmet need.
I'm not sure how much light I can shed on this, but certainly from our council's perspective is that the land north of Horsham allocation is to meet Horsham's need. It's a hub, so it includes obviously early years, primary, special educational needs, as well as secondary school education. It will meet the needs of Horsham. We understand that there are also needs from Crawley, which could be accommodated within that school, but the flexibility of the two forms of entry were for the sort of, I think we were given several examples of how, although there's a calculation for how much child product comes from developments, that in reality it's not an exact science, and it was in order to give that flexibility, as I understood it, probably from both authorities. But certainly the discussion that we had on the North Horsham Day was the additional developments that are coming forward in the town itself and the need for flexibility of provision within the town.
Well, yeah, but that's an awful lot of flexibility, isn't it? It's 2,000 homes worth of flexibility. On the figures I was given, one form of entry is roughly equivalent to 1,000.
It was, and I think the example was also given that there was a particular live example, as it happens in Mid-Sussex, where 1,000 homes had actually, the one form of entry had been generated from 600 homes. So, because of the...
okay, but, you've got to take an average position on this. I mean, I'm still not... I'm unclear. Sorry, I'm unclear.
So, can I just ask a question? I would have thought if the County Council, in looking at their educational provision responsibilities, had the sixth form entry not met all planned needs, they would have objected to it. So, I hate using the word logically in planning because it's often not logic. But surely, therefore, that the 2 FE, which Mr. Charles is saying is flexibility, is exactly there to meet situations like we're talking about today. I'm not aware that the County Council have objected to the 6 FE not meeting the needs as currently in the relevant emerging plans.
No, that's not what we're saying. We haven't objected to the proposal for 6 FE school at North Horsham. Actually, that's a position that we're keen to secure, with potential for expansion to 8 FE, because that helps us to address a secondary school educational need in the north of the district. Now, in education terms, we don't work district by district. It's based on localities which are far more flexible than the sort of municipal boundaries that we're dealing with here for local plans. The development that's being proposed here west of Ifield and Kilnwood Vale is not factored into any of our planning for secondary education, because those discussions haven't taken place. If they were to come forward, in addition to development that's planned in Horsham and Crawley, we would need to look at how secondary education would be provided. And I'm not able here and now to be able to do that work, because that requires us to go away, look at capacities, and look at ways to provide for the pupils that will be generated in that housing.
Yeah, I understand all of that, but that you then seem to be saying then that really to meet the planned needs as they currently stand for Crawley, assuming these don't go ahead, for Crawley and Horsham, take it, we're looking at that area, and we're looking at it's clearly these two are interrelated, that you need 8 forms at North Horsham, and that there's no capacity. All I'm interested in is whether or not you've said that there's no capacity in Crawley, and that therefore the developers' assertions that they could just do the pro rata contributions, and that that's not an issue from their point of view. You're saying, from my point of view, I need to know whether it is an issue or not. And if you're saying to me that there isn't really any capacity with all of these planned proposals as the plan currently stands, then what they say about secondary provision might be a bit more of an issue for me. And it would be something to take into account. And I'm just trying to find out whether these 2 form spare capacity at the moment that you say is potentially available at North Horsham is taken up or not with planned commitments.
It's not commitments, absolutely not. But what we're talking about here is development that is planned through the district planning framework.
Planned commitments, I've said, not commitments in the normal sense. The planned expectations and commitments of the housing numbers in the draft Crawley plan and the submitted HDPF.
And existing demographic change, yes, that's my understanding.
A 6 form entry?
No, the 8 form of entry, expanded school, as I understand it, is needed to address the need from Horsham and Crawley based on current plans.
All of it? All 8 forms?
That's my understanding.
Okay, well that's your understanding.
Elizabeth
that's
can
finally we've got there. I wasn't quite sure that you were saying that in terms.
Sir, I mean, I think you've got the point, but that can't be right, because if that was right, then it would be described as an 8-4 FE school now, would it not? Rather than a 6 and 2. And we've heard from the council that there's flexibility in there. What we're now being told is there's no flexibility, it's meeting it, full stop. It can't be right.
I'd just like to make one point, just in terms of clarification. The current position with regards to Crawley's local plan and the infrastructure in relation to secondary education is that there are still discussions underway with the Education Authority in terms of how much development can be accommodated through further expansions of the schools, the existing schools within Crawley. That's the first priority. In terms of their statement going forward, I think it's understood that it will require a further secondary school and that should be accommodated through discussions with our neighbouring authorities. That is why, as I understand it, the North Horsham School has been designed and planned and in that way, because the accommodation within the Crawley schools is the first priority.
Well, that's... Yeah.
Sure, you can appreciate that what we've got here is two plans at ever so slightly different stages in the plan-making process. So there is, I suppose, still a degree of uncertainty around the Horsham local plan, and what the proposals in the Horsham district planning framework do is provide us with the flexibility to cater for the need across the area that's coming forward through both plans. But actually, it isn't certain, and that's why it doesn't say 8FE, because at the moment, those discussions are still taking place.
Well, yeah, okay, but I mean, I would have thought fairly unlikely, understating it, that the development that's being proposed in Crawley and it would come forward, and even if it doesn't, the OAN needs figure would show that it would have to come forward somewhere else, given the constraints of the boundary. So Crawley is a sort of known amount, isn't it? It's not going to be that uncertain. Some people might be querying the need figure. I couldn't comment, but I mean, there's some level of certainty here about a sort of broad minimum figure of need that you've got to plan for.
But where that housing is provided is obviously down to the local planning authorities to determine.
If it doesn't go in Crawley and it does go to a new market town south of the district, say hypothetically, then that would create different needs.
Quite. Or if additional sites were coming forward on the edge of Crawley, that would create different needs, which we would need to consider and plan for accordingly.
But what I'm trying to get at is capacity here for this, based on a sort of reasonable assumptions. And the only thing I think, unless someone tells me differently, the only thing I could reasonably do is sort of look at what's planned at the moment in draft form in Crawley and what's planned in Horsham, and to sort of test that, and then to test the point that the developers have made that there's not going to be a capacity issue here, which you seem to be saying there might well be.
And we're doing exactly the same thing as you. We're assuming that the development in the district planning framework and the draft Crawley local plan comes forward, and there is an education solution being proposed as part of these plans to address that issue, which is for a sixth form of entry school at North Horsham, with potential to expand. If we were to include an eighth form of entry school at North Horsham, then the development within the Horsham district planning framework could not justify that, because it is part of the need is being generated outside of the plan area.
Well, but that could still be justified in the Horsham planning framework, because part of the justification for the Horsham numbers is that it's meeting need from outside the area. Certainly on a housing point.
But it would have
that's disputed. I mean,
it would have a fundamental impact on the cost of providing secondary education.
Well, how, but, well, it would.
And so that's precisely the point that we are relying on. Those additional contributions can come forward to help fund that additional 2FE.
Well, if they're, as a result, yeah, but they've got to be funded to meet needs other than yours, is what the council seem to be saying.
And what that then does is create a problem for Crawley.
Well, I'm really not following this. You can't have it both ways. Either you need all the schooling and you've got to find the funding for it to meet the needs, or you don't.
If the development comes forward outside of Crawley, and then Crawley try and bring forward a plan, so there is additional development taking place within Horsham, and Crawley try and bring forward their plan as they are currently attempting to do, then that will change the requirements on the Crawley plan. Because we will need a different secondary education solution. The current solution is not designed to cater for these additional sites.
No. But does... So, well, that's... But you're saying the current solution is only 6, because you haven't got funding for the other 2. That's what you just said.
I haven't said we haven't got funding for the other 2. I'm saying
well,
within
Horsham... just now. Maybe I misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
Within Horsham, the need is being generated, and we are seeking to secure a 6 FE school within Horsham. The need for expansion is to meet a wider need, which includes Crawley. So we will need funding from developments in Crawley to...
right. So you're going to use other what's in the draft plan in Crawley to fund possibly another 2 schools in another 2 form entry at North Horsham?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well,
doesn't that cut across what Crawley were just saying, though? Because they're undertaking their own capacity analysis to see what their own schools can deliver.
No, we're not undertaking any analysis. The County Council Education Department are considering the options, and the analysis that they're doing will include the 2 additional form entry within the North Horsham, as well as the expansion where possible within the schools existing in Crawley.
I think I'm getting this now, that there's, including the draft Crawley commitments, there's some capacity in Crawley to meet those, but not all, and including other commitments at Kilnwood Vale, presumably, that's going ahead, taken into account. And that therefore, in your draft Crawley plan, the needs likely to arise from that cannot be met within Crawley, and that they would then have to be met outside Crawley, and the most likely place at the moment, if it goes ahead, is North Horsham. And that the 6th form, the 6th entry school that's currently in the Horsham plan only meets needs in Horsham.
Yep.
That's your position. And the capacity for expansion by another 2 forms would be required, you think is likely to be required, and therefore paid for by developments in Crawley.
At least in part. Development doesn't typically fund in entirety secondary schools.
Well, no, okay. But, that's in broad terms. Right. So that leaves you without any capacity, they say. Do you have any comments on that?
we haven't seen any evidence that backs that up, and I think by their own admission they're still going through that exercise. So whether you can, how much weight you can attach to that conclusion is a decision for you, sir.
And that's correct. Work is still going on. This isn't a position that's fixed. We've got two plans here which are coming forward at slightly different timeframes, and the work that's been carried out, reflects that. Okay.
Has anyone got any other comments on this?
Yeah, I've got. The education argument goes across the whole plan, so it affects lots of other areas as well of the plan. And there's one point I'd like to make and a question I'd like clarification on. The point I'd like to make is I actually work in the education sector, so I'm fairly informed here. The point was made earlier by Ms. Charles that the plan has to have a degree of flexibility. I think that anyone would say if the plan put forward for a sixth form entry secondary school was exactly what was required for the next 30 years, 20 years of this plan, then without any flexibility for potential variance in school need because of fluctuations in population needs and other things, then I think that would be very questionable. And the fact that you're saying that two-form entry allowance is just for this small area isn't. It's for the whole of the North East area education area, because that's the area that West Sussex works on. The other point in there is that we've been campaigning as a company and generally for reduced school form numbers, and so that would require an increase in another increase. So that's fact.
Look, I'm sorry. You need to be very careful about. I've been quite generous with allowing you to participate in these things when really, actually, you shouldn't be here.
Okay.
Unless you're part of the council's team.
But I thought
I'm dealing with objections that the plan is unsound because it doesn't allocate more housing in Horsham adjoining Crawley.
But
do you support that position?
The question being discussed
here... Are you an objector saying that the plan...
The question being discussed here is the education provision.
It is, but you haven't got a locus here, Mr. Sallows. You haven't. You're not an Are you objecting saying that you want more housing on the west of Crawley?
No, I'm saying I want proper education provision.
You're not an objector with regard to this discussion. You're part of the council's support case if they want to adopt what you say.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask a question?
No, not really.
Okay. Because the question
you should
relates
you should do it through the council. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just not proper procedure. I can't allow it. Because you might be, you're introducing new points and new evidence that actually other people here who've made legitimate objections would have to respond to. You don't. I mean, I've tried to make that clear to supporters all the way round. In this particular forum, you're a supporter, aren't you, of the council's case?
In relation to one of these sites, definitely yes.
And what about the other one?
The other one, we have a neutral position.
Okay, so you're not an objector. No. You think the plan is sound because with these sites not being in it, yeah?
Except that not all the arguments for the soundness in the sustainability would I agree with.
Well, okay.
So I'm objecting to clauses in the sustainability.
I can take your written supporting comments into account.
Okay, but if I'm questioning the sustainability of the plan in relation to these sites, then
you can't. Okay. No, I mean, why should you? It's for the council to defend its plan.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm questioning what the council has put in its plan as sustainability for these sites.
They haven't put anything about the sustainability of these sites in the plan because they're not in the plan.
Well, west of Byfield is. It's not in the plan, but it's in the sustainability appraisal.
But we're not testing the sustainability appraisal. We're testing the plan.
Okay. Well, in previous sessions, the sustainability appraisal has been a part of the major evidence in support of the plan.
Yeah, but it's not. We're not testing that.
Okay.
We're testing what the allocations or the lack of allocations, taking into account the evidence that's in the sustainability appraisal that's being questioned. But it isn't for you to come here at this session, we've already wasted some time on this, questioning what the council's said in support of its position that the site shouldn't be included in the plan.
Am I allowed?
No. No, you're not allowed to go into any further about that. You're a supporter. Please bear that in mind. You're a supporter of the council at this session. To be honest, you shouldn't really be here at all, but you were, so, you know, I'm not being, I understand you've got an interest in all of this for the parish council, but, you know, you must understand that I have to run the examination according to the normal rules, and that is that I hear objectors and supporters. We're going to get this again on Tuesday with other supporters of the council's position that Mayfield should not be included. Now, I can't remember, is your position that Mayfield Town should be, you're objecting to the plan because you think housing needs should be met by a new market town?
We're not actually supporting Mayfield, but we believe part of our submission was that there should be a new market town, yes.
Right, okay. So you are an objector, so, well, if you might be supporting Mayfield or you might not. But there might be things that... So there, you will be an objector.
But I think the same applies here. That
no, it doesn't apply at all. It doesn't apply at all.
Right.
Because you're not supporting them. You're not objecting to the plan as being unsound because it's not got housing on the west of Crawley. Are you? You've just said so.
That's right.
Okay.
So that thing is correct.
Right, okay. Can we move on? Has anyone got anything else to say on education? I've taken your points after hearing that, trying to work out what the position is. Any points anyone wants to make about other social infrastructure such as health services and any overriding capacity constraints there? Council's not arguing that. That needs could be met somehow if it came forward. Okay. I think, well, that leads us on to other issues with, well, the landscape impact of both sites, which has been taken as a, there might be some, and then landscape impact and deliverability. I didn't put down biodiversity there because I didn't think anyone had raised that as a potential issue, that there were any particular constraints with regard to biodiversity. Are the council taking that as a point? No. Biodiversity rather than landscape impact.
Just biodiversity. It's just a very simple point to note on the proposed West of Ifield master plan. There'll be a link road back in to Crawley into Ifield, and that crosses the Ifield Brook Meadows site of conservation nature interest SNCI. So there will be some important sensitivities there.
Well, are you saying that should? Are you saying that they couldn't be dealt with through normal master planning process? And is there anything that the developers need to address that you think they haven't addressed?
I think it'd be unusual to take a link road right through the meadows. It may be able to be mitigated.
Okay, who's dealing with that from your point of view? Just discuss that briefly, please.
Yes, I will briefly. I'm not sure whether Mr Bright's aware of the addendum report that we submitted as part of our Matter 14 statement. I think it's Appendix 5, which is an updated ecology report, which deals with the potential impact on the Ifield Brook, Wood and Meadows SNCI and confirms that there is actually potential to enhance the conservation interest and no detriment will arise from the development that cannot be mitigated.
I'd just like to also point out with regards to that, because obviously a road going across it, yes, from a biodiversity perspective, there might be technical mitigation that can be undertaken. However, the site, that would be a severance of the site. The site is in Crawley's draft local plan as a local green space designation proposal. If that were to be accepted by our inspector through our own examination, then the site would benefit from Greenbelt policies within it. And obviously those are matters I don't necessarily think couldn't be resolved through detailed master planning should a site be allocated at that particular location. However, I think from a Crawley Borough Council perspective, we would have concerns with regards to the impact of a road crossing the Ifield Brook Meadows itself. It's identified and being proposed as local green space because of a number of different special characteristics that it has for its local community. Thank you.
Where's the easiest place for me to look at this on a map? On your master plan on page 3 of the pink?
Or page 11 of the blue.
Where's the... okay, so I've got a road going north to a roundabout that I actually... a proposed roundabout. Actually, I went there yesterday. Where's... is that in Crawley then, that area?
The land within Crawley and the land that we're specifically talking about is to the east of the brook that runs sort of north-south along the eastern edge of the site. So there's no proposed development within this landscape plan framework that would actually be within Crawley. The area within Crawley is the area that is the green area, really, immediately adjacent to the urban boundary. And the road that that's been referred to is the one that crosses from east to west across the stream, across the brook. Thank you.
So what are you saying then? That it's unacceptable to have an access there on biodiversity grounds to serve a development of this size? Well, Crawley, that was too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I think that the issue is that it's that the site itself would suffer from a severance. So in terms of the biodiversity, I haven't read their biodiversity and ecology report. However, I do think that site is being proposed for allocation because of its biodiversity value, its recreation value, and its special characteristics for the residents immediately adjacent to it in the wider Ifield area. A road crossing straight through it would certainly need some careful consideration if that were to be considered appropriate.
So we've done baseline surveys for the sink, and in many respects, its ecological value has diminished over the years. And what we are proposing is to take that on board and to very much enhance the ecological value of that land.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Are you the gentleman who was stuck on the M25?
Indeed, sir.
Sorry, what's your name, please?
Stephen Kirkpatrick from Scott Landscape.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to clarify the alignment of the road itself, it's very much, we've looked at it as a starting position in that can the gradients we need to achieve and the alignments we need to achieve actually work, and this really is the kind of the first option for that, just to demonstrate that it can. Of course, there'll be a lot more technical work that needs to come forward as part of an overall development of that.
Okay, landscape impact. Yeah, this was raised earlier on. Council's case is that, well, let's deal with Mr. Wilcox first. Any comments on landscape impact of your proposal?
I won't bore you with reading through what we've already put in submissions, but I think we can summarise it by saying that we have carried out, some years ago I have to say, 2012, but the situation hasn't changed, a detailed landscape assessment that was carried out by the same consultant who was employed and informed the evidence base that went into the Joint Area Action Plan. So it's consistency of approach is the point I'm getting over there. The methodology used, which we've set out in Appendix 1 of the technical report to the representations, is the tried and tested one, we believe, of the Countryside Agency's topic paper number 6, which looks at landscape sensitivity, visual sensitivity and landscape value. And we have used that assessment to inform the extent of the development envelope for the land to the west of Kilnwood Vale. And what that basically shows us is that we believe that there is capacity in landscape terms to secure a development of circa 750 units. However, it does recognise that there would be a need for some structural planting to the north and the west of that. And in addition, our land interest goes right up to Faygate Village. And what we have also put forward is a proposal that in order to ensure that there would be in perpetuity a gap there that, to be blunt, would not be reliant on the vagaries of the planning system, that could be managed, handed over to a trust, it would be our ideal approach, to ensure that it is, one, managed and maintained and forms a very distinctive gap between the westward extension of our development and Faygate Village, and in that respect would secure the distinctive character of Faygate Village and indeed the new development. And really I have little else to say. Our view is that in overall terms, if we take that landscape-led approach, there would not be the diminution of the gap between Crawley and Faygate, or indeed the gap between Crawley and Horsham, that objectors see as one of the sensitive issues. And I would just urge you, I know you've already seen the site, sir, and driven around it and that, and I recognise you're going to do that again. But as you drive along the A264, the southern boundary, I think the sense of gap is not just on the northern side of the A264. You must take into account the wider context of what actually does form the gap between the major settlements of Crawley and Horsham, and that is informed by also the land as you travel through it on the southern side of the A264. Okay,
I'll take that into account. Okay, the council's Are you going to deal with this, Mr. Bright, or for the council? I mean, on this particular site, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Your main concern is with a cumulative impact of coalescence, or is it
well, there's
the landscape of the site itself?
There's three main concerns. The proposed allocation, or the developer's proposal, extends on to the ridge, which we've talked about before, the local landscape character area number 10. So it is going to be visually prominent, and also it's very attractive wooded countryside on the steeper slopes, number one. Second point is the impact on the character of the AONB to the south, in terms of the way that, in a different way to where I felt at North Horsham, there isn't going to be a significant impact on the AONB. At Kilnwood Vale, there are characteristic views from the AONB looking northwards, as highlighted in my evidence at Homebush Park. They're not public views, but nonetheless, it's a part of how the setting of the AONB and how it's appreciated, and I would encourage you to do that, visit that on your site visit. And then thirdly, the final point is in terms of eroding the gap. This is an area where the landscape is much more open than some of the landscape further to the west, and you have got public footpaths crossing the area, and in my view it certainly will be eroding the gap, and indeed will be contributing to begin to contribute to a perception of coalescence with Faygate. Now, the gentleman from Crest has just said that part of their proposal to secure the gap would be an extensive area, perhaps managed by some kind of a trust, a country park area, I think they mention it. However, my question on that is, how is that actually going to be delivered if you just allocate the sort of effectively the red line around the sites that they've proposed? So if a planning application, if the site was allocated, a planning application come forward, you've got no means of securing that sort of country park.
Okay, do you want to come back on that point?
I can come back very easily on that point. We've got extensive experience of developing that at numerous sites through the country, and I can take you to them. Technically, how you would do it is by, if this were allocated and subsequently came forward with a planning application at the right time, it would be secured through a 106 agreement. And in terms of the red line on the plan here, and the point I made about the land ownership goes further on, of course it's perfectly legal in any 106 to include land that is under our control, and it is under our control, that could then be part of that legal agreement. So it would be secured through a legal agreement that would require the setting up of a management regime. I put forward a trust because that seems to be the one that is preferred by many people. There are other mechanisms. In terms of its delivery, sync funding of any capital costs that would go into that would have to be provided by the development, so that there wouldn't be a trust with no finance there. There would almost certainly be, which would have to be agreed with the council, a management programme for the management of it going forward, which could be costed as well. And again, the funding put in place for that. Those are all very, very standard. Where we, for example, one of the biggest ones we're doing currently at present is in North Swindon, which covers somewhere in the region of 100 acres, where we're working with the Wildlife Trust of Wiltshire in that respect, on exactly that process.
Okay, I accept that it could be dealt with through a section 106, but that wasn't clear in your evidence. But it still leaves the fundamental concerns that I've just raised about, in terms of the impact on the character of the AMB and developing on the area of low-no capacity on the ridge.
Yeah, do you want to comment on those? I mean, I've said before, I think I don't want to have extensive discussions about this here. I'll go and have a look on site. But
well, you'll be pleased to know I won't prolong the agony from that point of view. I'm not a landscape architect by training, but I'd like to think I do like the countryside. In terms of the first point, that it extends onto the ridge, our current scheme at Kilnwood Vale also proposes development on the northern side of the railway, which goes up towards that ridge. And we are not proposing development that goes higher up that ridge than indeed where it's already been approved. And I would also say that from the general viewpoints from the south, it will be seen against a backdrop of existing woodland. So I think in terms of its containment visually and character, I think our judgment is it's acceptable, but sir, you will visit it and make your own judgment.
Yeah, the plan on the SA plan for the alternative sites 341 includes a large area of land to the north of the rail. Well, more of it. There's not much south of the railway, but there's Kilnwood Copse. But I've seen another plan from you that's they're not actually with the statement for this hearing, but most of that area to the north you're not proposing to develop. Is that right?
That's correct. That is.
Because you've only got 750 proposed.
In total, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Just going on the impact from the
AONB point.
I would actually say, and again, judge this for yourself when you visit the site. Our existing site at Kilnwood Vale, with the noise bund and various other elements, comes actually quite close to the A264, and the AONB is literally on the other side there. Where we are proposing the extension of this site is actually, I would submit, further away visually than where we are currently building, and my understanding is that therefore impact on views are sensitive in terms of their distance, and with some of the existing landscaping that is there, again, I would ask you to take that into account. In terms of the erosion of the gap, I'm interested to learn that the council's expert thinks it's only a minor issue. We're quite concerned about it because it has been one we've been very well aware of, hence our proposal for the country park. And I just reiterate what I said before. We do not believe it will erode the gap to such a significant degree that Faygate will become part of Crawley, or indeed that Horsham and Crawley will be seen to be being joined.
Sorry, but I didn't say it was only a minor issue. I'm not sure where you got that from.
I don't think you did, actually. I'll allow you to come back on that.
It's one of the three fundamental points. In terms of, at least what we know at Kilnwood was that development was on a site that was partly reclaimed land, so you had that context. Yes, it did go north of the railway. I predated my involvement in the council, but I think if you're taking development further west along that ridge in a visually prominent location, then you are beginning to seriously undermine the gap at that point. You do have a very open landscape, which would be seen once you start building houses on it very prominently from the A264. At least in the case of Kilnwood, it's I would say to a greater extent seen against a wooded backdrop to the north and south.
Okay, I'm not going to take that any further. And the council rightly has the last say on that. Can we move on to west of Ifield then? I think the council's made some comments against you about landscape impact, and that it's they say a very sensitive landscape that shouldn't be developed, and that was a point that was made when it was considered at the last stage in the core strategy, I gather. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, sir, thank you. The key concerns of the Council are set out in para 144122 in matter 14. Starting with the first key impact being the loss of the very rural setting of Ifield Village Conservation Area. The evolving master plan for west of Ifield, which has been the subject of representations over many years, has very carefully ensured that there would be no built development that goes to the west of the conservation area. It is located to the southwest, and that would help ensure that the primary setting of the village conservation area is conserved, and the secondary setting in terms of the ability to appreciate the conservation area in terms of its listed buildings, and particularly the tower of the church, St Margaret's, from the wider landscape is again conserved. The second key impact that it identifies is the adverse impact on the site of nature conservation importance. And as I've already alluded to, this is an area of land that has lost its ecological value quite notably over the decades. There's a lot of recreational usage of that land. And what the proposed development west of Ifield does provide is an investment and the management of that land to enhance the ecological value of the sink, and to bring in proper recreational management. In addition to that, we are looking, it would also facilitate the flood relief scheme proposed by the Environment Agency. And what that would deliver is a significant area of new lowland wet meadow and grazing marsh, both of which are habitats that are on the Sussex Biodiversity Action Plan as rare habitats. Added to that, we would be restoring the historical small-scale hedgerow framework to the north of the built development area, again with habitat enhancement.
Okay. Do you want to come back on that, Mr. Bright? Be some improvements.
Yeah.
Ecological improvements and visual improvements.
Yes. That's
most of the development is on the golf course, isn't it? Or quite a substantial part of the development.
Maybe about 30%, yes. And that's not a...
I haven't played it. I went to have a quick look. But it's pretty flat, isn't it?
Well, actually...
Talking as a golfer there, actually.
It's, I wouldn't say it's completely flat. I mean, there are parts that are flat, but it undulates and goes up onto higher land. But that's not an area that I've identified as a major concern. I think that my colleagues may want to say something about any recreational issues around that, but it's not so much a landscape issue that I'm raising in a major way. Although I do question the extent to which the development goes further west out into the rural landscape. Just responding to my colleague over there, that first of all, in terms of Ifield Church, now I've got a master plan that I can see, which wasn't in some of the original statements. I can see that there's probably going to be scope there to protect the setting of the conservation area and views to Ifield Church and so on. In terms of the road going across Ifield Meadows, there may well be all sorts of wonderful ecological measures that can be done, which would enhance the landscape interest, but we haven't got actually any details of that road. I would imagine it's going to be partly on embankment and a bridge and so on, which could be quite intrusive in the sort of intimate, small-scale character of that area. And bear in mind, it's very well used by people on public footpaths. There will be impacts, but I wouldn't just focus on that in terms of land. My bigger concerns are a potential link road, which would come down from the north east and sweep around on the on the northern valley side of the River Mole, and then coming in to serve the development. And that, in terms of my original landscape capacity assessment, is an area of no capacity. That assessment obviously has been done more in terms of housing, but nonetheless, the issue here, it might be able to be visually mitigated, bearing in mind existing woodlands and hedgerows and enhancements, but basically that road is just going to cut through that small-scale network of fields and hedgerows, cause a lot of severance, and it crosses about 4 different public footpaths. So an area that is important for the public coming out from Crawley into the countryside. I think that's quite a significant concern, and I question a bit, even if land was to come forward at west of Ifield, whether that would be the best route for such a road. The other thing I just want to mention is, given the discussion this morning, bearing in mind the developers are saying they're proposing this area in addition to North Horsham, and bearing in mind that I think clearly from discussion further assessment of the transport, the highway requirements would have to be undertaken if they were both to come through together, then that could yet mean that a Western Relief Road is necessary, and that in itself would have quite severe landscape impacts to the south of linking south from Hyde Hill across another area of no capacity, extensive woodlands, hedgerows, relatively tranquil, unspoilt rural landscape, and then coming down through the ridge down to near Kilnwood Vale. So I think there's a lot of uncertainties about impact on landscape if we don't know the highway's position as well, and potentially severe impacts if all of that transport network needed to be built.
Okay, there's a few points for you to come back on there. We sort of rather passed over this link road, but I don't think we didn't really raise that, did we, in detail? Is anyone? There's no objection from you that this prejudices any potential link road, is there, from the county's point of view? And where would it go? Looking at the master plan, I've just on page 11 of the blue.
No, we've certainly been very clear that any development proposals for west of Ifield should not prejudice the future deliverability of the Crawley Western Relief Road, because that scheme actually doesn't have an approved alignment determined for it, but it is a scheme that was included in the county structure plan. And although the structure plan no longer has a statutory planning function, it's still regarded by the county council as a statement of its aspirations for the future, and therefore the county council is very keen to see the Western Relief Road scheme brought forward when that is possible. But in the meantime, we are very keen to make sure that there are no proposals brought forward which could prejudice the deliverability of that road, bearing in mind that there isn't a determined alignment for the road at the moment, and that a lot of work would need to be done to actually investigate what sort of alignment could be constructed which would meet the requirements and also minimise the sorts of impacts that have just been.
But you're not alleging that this would, are you?
Sorry?
You're not alleging that this proposed allocation would prejudice that?
No.
Right. Well, I mean, the points you've made, Mr. Bright, would apply anyway, wouldn't they? You're really saying you don't like the thought of a relief road on landscape terms.
Yes, because of the high character sensitivity of that landscape across. So irrespective of exactly where the alignment goes, and obviously there would be mitigation measures, I think fundamentally there would be some quite severe and significant landscape impacts. Because, it could go a bit closer to the Crawley edge and go through ancient woodland, it would go a bit further west, but it's
yeah, well, I don't think that's really a point for this examination, is it?
Well, it is. I would submit in that it's been said that developers are promoting this site in addition to North Horsham, and the county hasn't said that it wouldn't be required if if they both came forward together. It's still a possibility.
Well, but the county have said they want it anyway. All right.
Well,
I've heard what you've said,
yeah.
but okay. Let's take the developers. Mr. Kirkpatrick, do you want to comment on the landscape?
Yes, sir. 2 points
that have been raised.
With regard to, sorry to come back to the Western Relief Road, but I would suggest that the evolving landscape master plan allows for the development, the restoration of the historical tree hedgerow network to the north over there's 100 hectares of green infrastructure improvements there. In addition to, we would have a significant amount of new tree and shrub planting in that area, and I would have thought that would assist in the integration of the Western Relief Road should it come forward in future years. The second point, just to respond to Mr. Bright, who expressed some concern about the development extending to the west, I think one of the key assets of this site is that it is set in a landscape that is well treed. We've got numerous woodland blocks both within the site and on the periphery of the site's southern and northwestern boundaries, and it does provide the ability of the landscape to accommodate the new built form by the conservation of existing hedgerows, trees and woodland blocks and their reinforcement.
Okay, I've said I'd go and look on site. Do you want to come back on that, and then we'll finish on landscape impact?
Not in a major way. Just to say that I note the substantial areas of landscape enhancement, green infrastructure to the north, and obviously that could be a significant benefit. But in terms of going further west, yes. The landscape is quite well treed, quite well visually contained in places, but it would be quite a significant amount of development concentrated along Rusper Road, and as you move out from the sort of groups of houses that are suburban development on the southern side of Rusper Road, as you go continue along that road a little bit north and west, then the landscape any development in that area will be quite relatively visually prominent there that you can see for yourself on site.
Yeah, I drove there actually yesterday, but I'll go back there. And on that point, what's the sort of land ownership and control position? I mean, I've asked people if I can just go on sites, or can I see enough from public footpaths? And I'm not looking for a free round of golf either. So, but I presume I can just go to the pro shop and introduce myself.
It's fairly safe to just go into the golf course, park in the car park, and walk about the golf course and stay off the fairway when anyone's playing. Really,
I am a golfer, so I would be respectful of others playing.
The majority
and my own safety. What about the rest of the land that's not on the golf course?
There has been referred to a network of public footpaths that I think should enable you to get a good impression of that land.
Yeah. Okay. Right. On that point, then, I think that leads us on to the issues about deliverability and any other any other points people want to make. I'm not sure there is really a point from you because you've made your position quite clear, but on yours, you say that you can't get the golf course anyway, where most of this is, or a large part of this is going until 2022, is that right?
Yes, the lease on the golf course expires in, I think, 2021. I don't think that's necessarily a constraint on when the development would start. The golf course is only part of the overall site, and the other major land ownership within the master plan area is the Homes and Communities Agency. We've maintained a dialogue with them over a number of years. They're obviously aware that we're promoting the land.
Do they own all of this, do they?
No.
They own the rest of it?
A very large part of the area to the north of Rusper Road. By far the majority of the area to the north of Rusper Road is owned by the Homes and Communities Agency.
Is that a new town legacy issue then?
Yes. Originally it was owned by the Commission for New Towns, and by succession it passed to the Homes and Communities Agency. They're aware that we're promoting it, and they have said to us that if the land is allocated, then they would be willing to release it for development.
So what do you see about, how do you see this coming forward then in timing terms?
I think it's easy to underestimate just how long it takes forward to bring a very large site like this forward. If the site were allocated in the district plan now, I would imagine it would probably take until the end of 2016 to put together a planning application and an environmental statement, allowing for the negotiation of a Section 106, then probably a planning approval wouldn't be forthcoming until towards the end of 2017. And I think probably then the detailed design stage, designing infrastructure, reserve matters for the first phases of development would probably take us into late 2018. And then the upfront installation of infrastructure would probably commence in 2019, taking us to the first completed dwellings perhaps in 2020. I think given the aggregation of land ownerships within the master plan area, we'd probably be looking at a development that will be undertaken by 3 or possibly 4 developers. So I think it's reasonable to assume that by the 3rd year of development, the completion rate will be in excess of 200 a year, and that over 2,000 dwellings could be delivered by 2031.
Okay. The Council have any comments on this? I think you've also got a point about any other points you want to raise. The loss of the golf course, I think you're saying, is a loss of a recreation facility and anything else. Excuse me.
Yes, sir. The Council's case is that it would be a loss of a recreational facility. We are concerned also about the impact on the very well used public footpaths, which on the urban-rural fringe of Crawley. I think just listening to the debate, I think what has become clear to me is that we can't be sure that the access can be delivered because of the safeguarding of the second runway, the land that is identified on the master plan on page 11, which shows the link road through joining up to the roundabout to the north. That land actually is within the safeguarding zone for the airport, so until we have certainty on whether that land is needed or not, we don't know whether the link road or indeed a western relief road it can be delivered. We certainly don't have certainty on the aircraft noise. We don't have a secondary school solution. We don't have the capacity at the wastewater treatment works. I think so really what I'm saying is this is a timing issue. In Horsham's plan we have a good supply of housing for the first 15 years of our plan. We have said that we're going to review in 5 years' time. By then we should have more certainty on the airport situation, and I think it would be entirely appropriate to revisit the assessment of this site at that point. I mean, by contrast, we've got a proposal for land north of Horsham, which is evidenced, which is available and deliverable within the plan period to meet urgent and pressing local needs. And those needs are for jobs and homes, but also for school places, including the specialist identified local need for special educational needs. So I think the Council's case, there are a number of issues which we've referred to could perhaps be dealt with in terms of master planning, but it's the overall timing of this site, sir, that we have an issue with.
Okay, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so just firstly on the golf course, I mean, I think based upon our evidence, there's, being a fellow golfer as well, so there's 10 clubs within 10 kilometres of that, so the loss of one we don't see as being a major issue. You've obviously heard our evidence, and we contest the negatives that Ms Childs is putting up us, and you'll obviously make your own view on that, sir. But inherently, in terms of when you start talking about road layouts, I hope it's become very clear that the master plan, whilst there's a lot of work sits behind it, self-evidently there's a very large amount of land, and there has to be some degree of flexibility in that. So I'm sure a lot of these concerns can be resolved through good master planning practice moving forward.
What about this point about this is almost a new point, but that the road, the potential alignment of the Western Relief Road, you've shown a potential link there, goes through land that would be part of the potential second runway expansion land.
So yes, our main point of access is to the east. In terms of the number of trips in and out of the site, it will be very much to the east. We do have this northern access, which generally follows the alignment of a proposed Western Relief Road, but as my colleague says, that's something which can be changed as and when the Relief Road moves forward.
Sorry, just say that again. It could be changed.
The Relief Road is just a potential alignment at this moment in time,
yeah.
And it's something which could come forward as
well. That's your potential alignment. The county's saying they haven't got any alignment at all.
Because we've had to propose something just to show that our master plan can accommodate it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any other points that you want to make?
Could I just come back on that point about the alignment of the Crawley Western Relief Road? I think the gentleman's absolutely right. There are still options, and no fixed route is established for the Crawley Western Relief Road. And certainly in the discussions that would need to take place with Gatwick Airport in the future, we would be seeking to ensure that a Crawley Western Relief Road could continue to be delivered alongside an expanded airport. But at present, those discussions haven't taken place in any detail, so we don't know what that route might look like.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's what I understood the position to be, yeah. Okay, do the Council want to come back on... Well, before you do, Mr Wilcox, have you got anything else to say about your site in terms of deliverability or any other issues that have been raised by the Council?
I think just briefly, our case, and I know you have it, sir, is it's an extension to already a sustainable development when it is completed. It will actually make not only common sense in my view, but will make both the existing site and indeed the new site more viable, because we are not duplicating any of the facilities. It will provide more growth that will take the benefit of the new local centre. Public transport will be better patronaged, so from that point of view there will be significant improvements from that. In terms of deliverability, It is all under one land ownership, which is under our control. There are no issues from a legal point of view in that regard. Timing-wise, there is nothing to stop it coming forward earlier, apart from the fact that we are duty-bound to progress our current development at Kilnwood Vale, and it's that stops it coming forward, and why we're putting it forward for coming in the medium term. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to wrap up now and ask the council if they've got anything they want to respond to, firstly on west of Ifield and then secondly on west of Kilnwood Vale. Have you said all you want to say? Do you want to respond to any other points about deliverability from Kilnwood Vale west?
I think I've made my points in terms of west of Ifield. As I say, I think that it's a timing issue and that needs to be reassessed once we know more about the future of the potential second runway at Gatwick Airport. And just in summing up my comments about the extension of Kilnwood Vale, really would be to express my disappointment, having spent a considerable amount of time in front of your colleague, Mr Vickery, giving evidence. That wasn't the disappointing thing. The disappointing thing was the amount of time that I spent talking with him in the examination hearings for the Joint Air Action Plan about the western boundary. He was particularly concerned. He raised it along with his colleague who examined our core strategy, where they specifically referred to the requirement of a firm western edge boundary to defend against further development and to set long-term limits for the western expansion of Crawley. They talked about very good landscape reasons for having such a requirement, such as preventing incursion into and damage to the rural area. And we spent a considerable amount of time working out the details of that western boundary of Kilnwood Vale to provide such a western boundary.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to belittle your comment. So I'll look at the... well, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk to him about that other than just sort of read what he said, really. I will be seeing him next week, but we've got a training. I'm giving some training as well as receiving some training on the local plan. So I know he won't be there. He's done another one. So I'll just read his report, if that's what okay, about that issue. I'll take note of that point. Okay, has everyone had a chance to say everything? Thanks very much. That concludes this session. We've got another session next week on Tuesday we're going to start with Mayfield Market Town and then go on to other Horsham sites. And then there'll be I think what will probably be a very brief infrastructure session on the Wednesday, before I sort of go away and mull all that's been said and written over. Okay, thank you very much for your contributions. Hope you have a safe journey. I hope the M25, it depends which way round you went. I've got to go on it, so I hope that's clear. But anyway, I hope you all have a safe journey. Thank you for your contributions. See you all on Tuesday.